The night shift had just begun at Winston Enterprises, and the halls of the towering corporate building were quiet, except for the occasional echo of laughter coming from the break room. Inside, a group of employees sat around, sipping coffee and chatting as they took an extended break, longer than their boss would have approved of. But they weren't worried. The CEO of the company, Mr. James Carter, rarely stepped foot into this part of the office, and even if he did, they doubted he'd care about what a few low-level employees were up to. What they didn't know was that James Carter was, in fact, much closer than they thought. Dressed in a simple janitor's uniform, his sleeves rolled up and a mop in hand, he was right there among them, listening, observing, and taking in every single word. He had spent years building Winston Enterprises from the ground up, but lately, rumors had reached his ears about a toxic culture festering in the very heart of his company. Employees were being mistreated, newcomers were being bullied, and instead of teamwork, there was arrogance and cruelty. So, he had decided to see it for himself. No cameras, no assistants, just him, alone, disguised as a janitor. He had expected to witness some unprofessional behavior, but what he found was far worse. "Hey, new guy," one of the employees, a tall man with a smug grin, called out to him. "Make yourself useful and grab us some more coffee." The others chuckled, barely even glancing at him as they continued their conversation. James hesitated for a moment before nodding, playing along. He walked over to the coffee machine, filling a cup while listening in on their talk. "I swear, these new hires are getting dumber and dumber," a woman with a sharp voice said, shaking her head. "Did you see that intern today? Couldn't even figure out the printer. Yeah, and don't even get me started on the janitors." Another man added, "They're basically invisible. Probably couldn't get a real job, so they settled for cleaning up after people like us." James tightened his grip on the coffee pot. He had heard enough. It wasn't just the way they were talking about their co-workers. It was the entitlement, the complete lack of respect. These weren't the kind of people he wanted representing his company. But he wasn't done yet. If they treated a janitor like this, how were they treating their colleagues, their clients? He needed to know more. For the next few days, James continued his undercover work, cleaning floors, emptying trash cans, and listening. What he discovered was appalling. New employees were being deliberately misled on tasks, just so senior staff could laugh at their mistakes. A young receptionist had been reduced to tears after being berated for something that wasn't even her fault. And when one of the actual janitors made a small mistake, spilling a bucket of water near the break room, instead of helping, the employees stood back, watching, and whispering cruel jokes under their breath. James clenched his jaw. This wasn't the company he had built. This wasn't the kind of leadership he wanted in his office. It was time to put an end to it. Then, one fateful morning, James Carter walked into the office, not as a janitor, but as the CEO. This time, he wasn't carrying a mop. He was carrying a folder filled with names, complaints, and everything he had witnessed. As he stepped into the same break room where he had once stood unnoticed, the employees who had mocked him just days before froze in place. Their laughter died. Their expressions changed from amusement to pure shock. James took a deep breath, looking each of them in the eye before finally speaking. "Let's talk. What happened next? You won't believe the fallout." Stay tuned. The break room, once filled with laughter and casual arrogance, had fallen into complete silence. The employees who had mocked and belittled the janitor just days ago were now staring at him, except he wasn't holding a mop this time. He wasn't the quiet, invisible worker they had ignored. He was James Carter, their CEO, and the look on his face was nothing short of deadly serious. Some of them shifted uncomfortably in their seats, Others looked at each other, as if searching for an explanation, an excuse, anything that could justify what was about to happen. But deep down, they knew. They knew what they had done. They just never imagined that the person they had been ridiculing was the very man who held their jobs in his hands. James took a slow step forward, his gaze steady. "Let's talk," he repeated, his voice firm but eerily calm. A few employees tried to play it off. The man who had ordered James to fetch coffee forced a nervous chuckle. "Oh, wow, this is funny. You really had us going, boss. That was, one heck of an experiment." James didn't smile. "An experiment?" he echoed. His voice was so controlled that it sent a chill through the room. "Is that what you think this was?" The man swallowed hard, realizing his attempt at humor had only made things worse. James took another step forward, his eyes scanning the room. "Do you know why I did this?" he asked, his voice softer now, but no less dangerous. "Because I started hearing things about this office. Complaints, stories. I wanted to believe they weren't true. That's why I came here, not as your boss, not as someone you had to impress, but as someone you thought was beneath you." He let the words hang in the air. "And you proved every rumor right." A woman near the back, the one who had mocked the intern, shifted in her seat. "Mr. Carter, with all due respect, we were just joking. We didn't mean anything by it." James tilted his head. "Joking?" He let out a slow breath, shaking his head. "I watched an intern leave this office in tears because of a joke. I watched a janitor be laughed at for making a simple mistake instead of being helped. I watched employees, my employees, treat others with so much disrespect that I didn't even recognize the company I built." The tension in the room thickened. No one dared to speak. James turned slightly, glancing toward the hallway, where a few other employees had gathered, listening. He knew that word was spreading fast. That was good. He wanted them to hear this. "You all thought I was invisible," he continued, "that I didn't matter. But let me tell you something. Every single person in this building matters, from the interns to the janitors to the executives. And if you don't believe that, if you think you're too important to treat people with respect, then you don't belong here." The air in the room became suffocating. Some employees looked down at their hands. Others stared straight ahead, too afraid to make eye contact. Then, James pulled out the folder he had been carrying. He opened it and scanned the list. "I have names," he said, flipping through the pages. "Names of people who have repeatedly contributed to this toxic culture. Names of those who think belittling others is a sign of power instead of weakness. And I also have names of employees who have tried to do the right thing, who have stood up for others, even when it wasn't easy." The employees shifted again. Some sat straighter, while others seemed to shrink in their seats. James let the tension build for a moment before continuing. "I'm making changes, effective immediately." His eyes locked onto the man who had called him new guy and treated him like a servant. "And I'm starting right now." The man's face turned pale. "Sir, James held up a hand, silencing him. "Save it." He turned his attention to the rest of the room. "You've all had the chance to show your true colors. And you did." He tapped the folder. "Some of you will not be working here by the end of the day." A few gasps escaped from the employees, who were beginning to realize just how serious he was. James turned, walking toward the door, pausing just long enough to glance over his shoulder. "If you're one of the people who treats others with dignity and respect, you have nothing to worry about. But if you've spent your time tearing others down, well, you'll find out soon enough where you stand." Then, without another word, he walked out. As soon as he was gone, the break room erupted into a mix of panic and whispers. Some were trying to justify their behavior. Others were already making desperate phone calls. And a few sat in stunned silence, realizing too late that they had made a terrible mistake. And James, he was already on his way to his office, ready to sign the papers that would change the future of his company forever. James sat in his office, the weight of the past few days pressing heavily on his shoulders. The folder of names lay open on his desk, and he flipped through it one last time. He had seen everything he needed to see, heard every excuse, every cruel joke, every careless remark. Now it was time to act. The first set of emails had already been sent. Some employees would find termination notices waiting for them, their access to the building revoked by the end of the day. Others, those who had participated but not led the toxic behavior, would receive final warnings and be placed under strict supervision. And a select few, the ones who had quietly tried to stand up for their co-workers but had been drowned out by the louder, meaner voices, would receive something different: recognition. There was a knock at the door. His assistant, Maria, peeked inside. "It's already happening," she said. "People are packing their things. Some are trying to talk their way out of it." James nodded. "Let them try." Maria hesitated, then stepped fully into the office. "There's one more thing," she said carefully. "Some of the employees who are staying, they're scared. They're worried about what's next." James sighed. He understood. When a workplace turned toxic, it wasn't just about getting rid of the bad. It was about rebuilding trust for the good. He stood up, straightening his jacket. "Call a meeting," he said. "Everyone who's left. I want them in the main conference room in 30 minutes. When he walked into the room half an hour later, the tension was thick. The employees who remained sat quietly, exchanging uncertain glances. Some still seemed nervous, as if waiting for the next blow to fall. Others looked hopeful, sensing that change, real change, was finally happening. James took his place at the front of the room. "I know the past few days have been intense," he started. "I know some of you are worried about what happens next. Let me be clear. This isn't about punishing people for the sake of it. This is about making sure that Winston Enterprises is a place where people are treated with respect, where no one is afraid to come to work." A few people nodded. He could see relief settling in their faces. "This company isn't just about profits. It's about people," he continued. "And that means accountability. It means making sure the right people are leading and the right people are staying. If you're here, it's because I believe you want this company to be better, and I'm going to need your help to make that happen." A young woman in the front row, someone James had seen being dismissed by her co-workers before, raised her hand hesitantly. "What if things don't change?" she asked. "What if new people come in and it starts again?" James met her gaze. "Then we stop it before it spreads," he said. "It starts with leadership. It starts with speaking up. No one should feel like they have to stay silent. If you see something, say something. I'll be listening. And this time, I won't be the only one." Silence followed. Then slowly, someone clapped. Then another. And another. Until the entire room was filled with applause. Not out of obligation, but out of relief, out of hope. As the meeting ended and employees began to file out, James stayed back, watching them go. Some still looked uncertain, but for the first time, there was something else in their expressions: trust. Maria walked up beside him. "You really did it," she said softly. James exhaled. "Not yet, but we're on the way." And as he looked out over his company, his real company, he knew that Winston Enterprises would never be the same again. And that was exactly how it should be.